This sitting is resumed. Prior to suspension for lunch, we were in Standing Finance Committee. Standing Finance Committee shall resume.
This Honourable House is now in committee. Honourable Member for St. Michael South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to begin by thanking the Honourable Minister and his team, of course. I think the Honourable Minister has performed with great distinction since taking up the leadership of this ministry, and I commend him and his entire team. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, sorry, I have three questions. Mr. Chairman. The first is in relation to, I've heard us have conversation during the course of the day about our tourism product being old, about the sites that would have been around since I was a boy and before, and perhaps I heard you say, Mr. Minister, the need to have greater investment and to encourage people to invest in tourism. But beyond our product being old, it is clear to me that our tourists are old. So the product is old, but the persons who come here are also old. We have an aging, or the records would have shown, unless it's changed very recently, we had an aging demographic as the basis primarily of our tourism product. So while this is a challenge for all of us, really, I have responsibility for aging, so I know aging is a thing. I also feel that there has to be a point where we have to be able to engage millennials, the new kind of traveler, and so on. And beyond these sites, because a lot of these tourists, these younger tourists, do not come to spend their time doing sun, sea, and sand, or Harrison's Cave. And so I would have seen very recently one of your senior officials also in Trinidad. I thought he was very busy trying to promote Barbados. And I also wonder, I would like to know what are the returns from that, and if that is an attempt to get younger tourists. But what really is our international plan for getting younger tourists? It is all right to have the older tourists at Ilaro Court, the return visitor at Ilaro Court, and to celebrate them. But that in itself is going to be a challenge and will make tourism unsustainable. So I'm just wondering, sir, and then we've seen it also with some persons who love Barbados, some of the older, and invest in Barbados, but as they pass to the great beyond, we're having difficulty even with younger people who love Barbados the same and continue that same legacy. So I'm just wondering, considering the fact that our tourists seem to be older and aging, what are the plans in relation not only to the product, the old tourist product, but the older tourists? That's my first question.
Thank you, Minister, and on behalf of the team, I'd like to thank you for your kind words, reflective of what we've been trying to accomplish within the ministry. In respect of the demographic and the guest profile of Barbados, it is fair to say that Barbados enjoys a significantly higher repeat guests factor than other products or other destinations. That has been the case because there are a number of visitors, who, because of the warmth and friendliness of our people, continue to come back here, and we have, even in the records of the BTMI, persons who visited Barbados more than 100 times. And that's what has always led us to the visitor loyalty program and what we do for them, particularly during the winter when they're in Barbados. It is also true to say that because visitors have been coming here for many years, they would have aged over the period. Barbados is a destination that naturally attracts people to it because, like I said, the warmth and friendliness of the people. What we are focusing now, and let me also make this point, that a lot of the persons who visit Barbados are the people who stay on the South Coast or on the West Coast. But they're persons who have that natural affinity for Barbados, and therefore they see Barbados as their second home or a home away from home. There's some who have even bought properties on the island, and for that we are grateful because that component has also allowed us to generate employment. You have a whole entire house manager and associated staff working at either a villa or a property or a home owned by these visitors. The significant benefit that we get from the demographic profile is that they bring their children and their grandchildren to Barbados, and they bring them here to experience Barbados. And the children and the grandchildren also fall in love with Barbados. And don't care where they go in the world, they will always return to Barbados and consider Barbados home. So it's going to evolve in terms of the demographic profile. I might also add that during that period, especially in the month of February, where you have a significant repeat guest factor on the island, Barbados also records, in my opinion, the highest income during that month because there are people who are very wealthy and there are people who come to Barbados in the month of February and they bring their families. The same also applies to Christmas and New Year's Eve. As we transition, it is always good to look for new and demographic profile in order for us to sustain. And I think we've been doing a very good job in sustaining our demographic profiles. We have, on the one hand, what might seem to be a very aged guest population, but on the other hand, equally, we have the grandchildren and the children who are coming back, who tell their friends and who allow their friends to come to Barbados. We're constantly looking at the visitor profile, our marketing strategies, and I'll ask Mr. King and the CEO to speak to this later on today. But we have seen and witnessed the visitor profile. We have, for example, a number of influencers who come to Barbados from different geographic profiles who would feed the message back to that particular market or those markets that we will want to generate interest. Particularly on the South Coast, where people like to have the entertainment, and people like to have an opportunity just to be outdoors and to enjoy themselves. That attracts a different guest profile or visitor profile to the destination. But we are mindful of it, and as we've seen in this current year, in terms of winter season, where we're beginning to see a leveling of our performance in respect of our pre-pandemic, we are beginning to see that that profile has not in any way been lost, and we will continue to build out the programs, the marketing programs, and directing marketing campaigns into the different demographic profiles in order for us to sustain Barbados' tourism. We also have, and I see it especially when we travel on the aircraft, a number of younger visitors come into Barbados for multiple interests. There are those who come to Barbados for heritage tourism. There are those who want to come to Barbados for the first time perhaps to see what we have. And there are people who just love to come to Barbados for the restaurants and for the good life that we have. But what I will do, I will ask Mr. King, who is the responsible for marketing at BTMI, along with the Chief Executive Officer, to weigh in and provide additional information, specifically to minister to your question what we're doing with respect to our demographic and visitor profile marketing initiatives. Mr. King?
Mr. Chairman, honorable members, thank you, Minister. My name is Anderson King. I am the Director of Marketing at the BTMI. First, to address the question as it relates to activations in Trinidad, one of the interesting things this year was, as we were carrying on our negotiations with the different events and activities and sponsorship opportunities in Trinidad for Carnival, was that we found ourselves in bidding wars with the other competing islands in the Caribbean, because belatedly they realized that our strategy was working. The opportunities that we have to market throughout the Caribbean, specifically for the slower period in summer, is one that we won't let life follow. And building these relationships throughout the Caribbean, as well as engaging with that critical potential visitor, is one of the tactics that we've taken over the last 2 or 3 years. And what do we get out of it? As we move throughout the Caribbean for large events and carnivals, is the opportunity to engage directly with customers via a booth where we give them an experience that's more than just advertising. So we use virtual reality goggles, which gives you a fully immersive experience of different attractions and activities you can have in Barbados. We also partner, which is critical as well, we partner with National Cultural Foundation to promote the 50th anniversary of Cropova this year. Again, what's important is that this year, what was fortunate for us, specifically for that period of summer, is we have Cropova happening during that period, World Cup happening during that period, as well as the planned launch of the gathering for 2025 as well. We were able to gather over between 700 and 800 direct signups for our database. The CEO mentioned earlier how important it is in terms of our targeting that we have. We utilize technology and we speak to people to their interests with relevant information. And that target of what we call carnival chasers, we've identified as a group of people who move throughout the Caribbean from carnival to carnival, and we want to make sure that we're always considered as a #1 option for that target. And then, of course, in the traditional PR and earned media, we conducted quite a bit of interviews in the market as well with Caribbean Passport and Synergy TV, et cetera. So the strategy really and truly is, it's more than just the carnival activations, but it is how we seek more opportunities to engage with a critical audience for us by going where they are, talking to them about what they're interested in, and promoting Destination Barbados as a #1 choice for them in the Caribbean. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hines?
Thank you, Minister. What I will also add is that to target the new traveler, or to target the younger traveler, we need to communicate in ways that they understand and ways that they frequent. So you would see a strategy where we employ more social media tactics, and also a strategy where we use a lot more influencers, which is something that is very prevalent among the younger traveler. Now, what we have been able to do is to utilize insightful information. We have signed up with a piece of technology that tells us not only which audience to target, but also who's best fit to target that audience. So we go through a screening process in the selection of the influencers and the ones who are best fit to deliver the message we want and to deliver the message to the groups which we are targeting. And it also allows us, after the activation is done, to monitor to see the success of that particular campaign and the particular influencers which we use. So it is all data-driven, which we continue to employ in all the tactics we use to reach the audiences which we specifically want to speak to about certain marketing tactics. Thanks, Minister.
Thank you very much. And to just reinforce it as well, it is about diversification. And when you're diversifying a market, you have to look and see what is it that we're offering in the destination, and when you diversify, who are you catering to? And therefore, these are all questions when we feed it into the marketing plan, we have to be mindful of. But what we're doing is that we're focusing on critical niche markets in order to advance our demographic profile. We have to be careful. I'm not sitting on the fence when it comes to it, but I also think that different profiles will give you different yields in a market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister and team. I'm actually happy to hear, I wasn't thinking about it in that way, but in relation to building up our summer numbers when it is normally lower. My second question, Honourable Minister, is in relation to the port. Now, a few weeks ago when I spoke in this place, I had mentioned that which was made public, that the government had made a determination and then followed up with that determination with practice, and had indeed reduced fees at the Bridgetown port in the first instance by 10%, and then in the second instance, I think by 7.5%. And the number that I had seen being referred to was $10 million, which would have been the loss of revenue at that time in the conversation. Trusting those numbers because they came from a most reputable state-owned enterprise commercial, some members in the private sector then reached out to me and they asked me where those numbers came from. And I had then conveyed it was my understanding that the government of Barbados had made business in the port cheaper in that context by reducing these rates. What was said to me was that, in fact, there has been an increase in the charges at the Bridgetown port. And so my question is really twofold. Firstly, I would like to know if there really has been a decrease or an increase in these rates, what those rates are, and what monies are we talking about. And if indeed the prices of items have increased, then some explanation to the people of Barbados as to why they are not seeing those reductions.
Thank you, Honourable Member, and you're correct that there has been a reduction of fees, the last fee being the adjustment being 7.5%. The Chief Executive Officer of the Barbados Port Inc. is here with us. He's very much aware of these matters, and therefore I'll ask him to speak, and then I'll reserve my right to speak thereafter. Mr. John Murray.
Thank you, Minister. There's a narrative that cost at the port plays a significant role in the cost of goods in Barbados. This is touted for whatever reason, if we're looking at all the other factors. The undisputed fact is that the port did reduce port charges on containers that are arriving to Barbados, as well as exports. In April last year, we transitioned to a full free-out port. Historically, the port operated as a liner port where all port charges came through the agent from the line. In the early 90s, we transitioned to partial local charges being collected locally, and three or so charges remain with the line: the crane charge, the stevedore levy, and some labor charges. When we transitioned to full free-out in April last year, those charges, which are local charges, are to be collected locally. So prior to April last year, some charges were collected directly from importers, and some were collected through the agent from the shipping line. We transitioned to have all those charges collected locally. Those charges worked out at $5.20 $520 Barbados dollars per 20-foot container. We have a correspondence from the Florida Shipowners Group directly on 1st of March last year, showing and confirming that they reduced their charges by that $520. We then added the remaining charges to the local charges and reduced it by 10%. That had the revenue impact that reduced the port's revenue by $6.6 million. That is the undisputed fact. The Prime Minister mandated, and on February 1st this year, the charges were reduced by a further 7.5%, and that amounted on a full year to 4.8. So we're talking about $11.4 million in reduced revenue from the port by reducing the charges on containers. Now, the impact on the prices. Let's use an example. The past president of the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and the largest shipping line doing business in Barbados, they conducted an exercise to look at what is the impact of port charges on the cost. And they came up with between 1 to 3%, depending on the value of the imports. Let's use an example. A tin of corned beef, I went to the supermarket recently. A tin of corned beef averages about $6 per tin. And at 3%, the higher end, and this is a price which includes markups, that's 18 cents. A 10% reduction, therefore, is just 2 cents. So the port's impact by reducing the prices by that percentage is small. That's really what it is. But it is still an attempt to contain the cost of doing business and the cost of goods. We have no control over freight. We have no control over the other players in the industry, the importers, the other players who are charged. I have it as a fact. I have information of an entity that moved its handling charge on a 40-foot container around the same time that we reduced our prices from $75 per 40-foot container to $200 per 40-foot container. So that would have negated the impact the port might have had by reducing its revenue. We have no control, as I said earlier, on the cost of the produce coming in or the goods, or of the freight, or those other factors. But we did, in fact, reduce the revenue of the port, a bit to our detriment, given the kind of developmental work that we have to undertake. As I said, in summary, the port did reduce its revenue by that initiative by over $11 million on the full year. I hope that answers the question, Minister.
Thank you. Perhaps I'm not sure if you want to also let the House and the country know what you also did in respect of the recyclers, because they too export. And I sense that there may have been an issue regarding that matter from the import side, and you may perhaps wish to address it for the benefit of the honourable member and all other members. Thanks.
Very important. Thank you, Minister. Yes, indeed, the recyclers have complained. They export scrap metal and so on, and their charges are normally freight collect, meaning the person on the other end pays the freight. So our initiative would have reduced the cost on the other end. What ought to have happened is that the recyclers should have increased the price, but they have not done so. And to them, they've complained that previously they were getting lower port charges. It's now higher, given what we said earlier about consolidating the charges that were normally collected through the shipping agent from the line. So they were indeed faced with higher port charges. However, we have granted a concession to the recyclers and reduced the port charges to what they were before, approximately what they were before. That has gone into effect retroactively to when we made the change to a free out port operation.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister and team, for that very concise response to the question. The final question Sir, it would be very difficult for me to allow this team to leave as a former minister responsible for maritime and not ask maritime questions, Minister. You must know that that was coming. I am wondering, it's rather open-ended, but I am wondering, sir, one of the things I think that Barbadians are not as aware of as they ought to be, notwithstanding how we trade, is, first of all, the role that shipping plays in Barbados. And Barbados has a destination involved in shipping. And also the fact that when we came into office in 2018, we were subjected to an audit, obviously not of the results not being of our doing, but that audit has shown that we did desperately, terribly, in relation to what they found was Barbados' standing in relation to a number of these affairs. And consequently, we were asked to do a number of things to make wrong things right, including legislation. When I left, we're still here, when I left the ministry, I know that there was a lot of work being done on a number of bills. And I would like for you to take this opportunity and your team to tell us some of the work that is being done in that maritime space and the importance that I think this work will have for developing Barbados as a shipping destination or as a destination somehow involved in shipping. And to use this opportunity, I think, first of all, also to tell us in relation to the items that were on the audit, some of them, I don't remember all of them, but definitely one was shipping. I think one was attendance at meetings. Where we are in relation to where we would stand if and when Barbados is audited again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. You, and for the record, you would have done, when you were Minister responsible for the economy, a lot of work in respect of the maritime affairs. And therefore, a lot of what we have brought to Parliament since you left that ministry is as a result of your initial leadership there. So we have to thank you for that as well. What I can tell you is that we brought a number of pieces of legislation to the Parliament. We would have brought the FAL Act, Facilitation of Maritime Traffic Act. We would have also, just recently, we brought the Seaport Industry Bill to Parliament, where we discussed it. And we also have the additional pieces of the merchant suite of legislation and regulations to bring to this Parliament to really modernize Barbados's maritime affairs. You're correct that there was the 2018 maritime audit, and as a result of that audit, as you're well aware, but for the benefit of other members of the House, there were a number of corrections that had to be undertaken, and therefore we've taken the opportunity. We also have to thank the Attorney General and his team at the AG's office for working around the clock to assist us with getting this legislation through. In particular, the FAL Act, which as a result of the IMO conventions, we had to certify to the IMO that would have been in place so that we remain current. The importance of all of this and what we're doing in terms of maritime affairs is if we want to attract more flags to Barbados and other shipping business, and if we're going to build out the Bridgetown port as a hub and certainly a transshipment port, we have to almost get our house in order. And that is what we are seeking to do in respect of maritime affairs. We have Ms. Najla King, who's here with us, who, and also Ms. Jacqueline Blackman, who's also the Chief Technical Officer in the ministry. Now, they're experts in this matter, and I'm sure they can speak to it in a way perhaps that I can't. But I thought that I would give you a bit of context and background in respect of where we're going and preparing Barbados to take advantage of the range of shipping legislation that could help us drive additional business. Once we have our house in order in respect of maritime affairs, then we'll be able to attract
even more shipping business to Barbados, and more registration of businesses here, especially as it relates to shipping. I'll pause and I'll ask both Ms. Najla King and Jacqueline Blackman to speak to this matter. Najla?
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, honorable members of the House. In respect of the audit conducted by the International Maritime Organization,
Officer, before you proceed, just give your name and your position,
Najla
please.
King,
Thank you.
Director of Maritime Affairs, acting. So in respect of the audit conducted by the International Maritime Organization, which is commonly referred to as the IMO in short, is a specialized agency of the UN, and they are the global shipping industry's regulatory body for shipping and maritime-related affairs. Our standards in terms of how we regulate safe shipping, secure shipping, and ensuring that shipping activities do not pollute the marine environment derived from IMO instruments. And we have been undergoing an intensive legislative reform program by incorporating these instruments to correct a number of legislative-related deficiencies identified in the said audit. The next upcoming audit is slated between this year and next year. However, to date, we have successfully passed the Facilitation of International Maritime Traffic Act, which would expedite and harmonize the documentary processes in relation to ships arriving to, staying in, and departing from ports in Barbados. Coming up shortly will be the Shipping Domestic Vessels Suite of Laws, which would regulate small vessels operating in our domestic space and the Caribbean trading area. And we have our Marine Transport Emissions Control Suite of Laws, which would ensure that ships do not pollute the atmosphere and that they operate in an energy-efficient manner. The Merchant Shipping Suite of Laws would correct the bulk of the remaining deficiencies identified that pertain to structural safety of ships, safe equipment, ensuring that the ships do not pollute the environment with oil, oily waste, chemicals, hazardous waste, and those kind of matter, and also to provide a framework to regulate the international registry and other registry-related activities. So it is a comprehensive framework that would help us to attain and maintain a standard of safe, secure, and efficient shipping on clean oceans, enhance Barbados' reputation as a flag state and also as a port state in relation to foreign registered ships visiting our island, and would generally help us to improve business at the ship-port interface. Thank you.
Ms. Blackman?
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon, members in the House. I'm Jacqueline Blackman, the Chief Technical Officer in the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport. And while we have been working on the legislative process, we have also been meeting with local boat owners, vessel owners, in terms of what we propose to do and to get input from them as we continue to build out our legislative framework and domestic shipping services. While we are waiting on that matter in terms of the domestic legislation domestic vessels being proclaimed, we have started to speak with the boat owners and institute certain safety measures which would protect persons who are using the beaches. This would include the implementation of certain corridors where water sports operators will be able to have a dedicated lane to and from areas of water sports operations. That would protect other persons, the bathers or the users of the water, so that we can avoid as much as possible any incidents. In addition to that, as the Director of Maritime Affairs has spoken about the Facilitation Act, that would have implemented or made formal the Maritime Single Window, which is sort of a one-stop shop for, not one-stop shop, but one stop for vessels visiting the island. And that has been implemented by the Barbados Port Inc. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask I think it's important for the country to know as well, because like me, when I joined the ministry, you ask yourself what is FAL, and
and what is so critical or important about that piece of legislation. And I will ask the officers again to just explain, because it also speaks to the processing of documents and the efficient handling of ship vessels coming into the port of Bridgetown. And I would therefore ask Najla to perhaps explain to the House why we are moving to a lot of the electronic single windows and the benefit of us making such adjustments. Najla?
Thank you. The importance of the Facilitation International Maritime Traffic Act even goes wider in the context of climate change, reducing congestion in ports, and also generally ensuring that during the voyage of ships here to the island, that a lot of the processes that delay them and prevent them from getting earlier time releases for passengers to enjoy tours, or even for the ship owner or agent to carry out certain survey or repair activities, those processes will now be expedited because you would have the information well in advance. You'll be able to review it, the relevant agencies, via the Maritime Single Window system that has been built by Barbados Port Inc. and is currently being operated. And we would receive everything via the window. As I said beforehand, we'd be able to clear the vessel, either a final clearance prior to arrival, once everything is in order, or a provisional clearance pending any other further information or what have you that may be required, which can be given when they are actually here on island. But what it does essentially is to ensure that we speed up the process of clearance and remove the bureaucracy, remove duplication of the ship having to submit the same information more than once to a particular entity, and just make it a more business-friendly environment, more customer-friendly, and to enhance the service overall and the experience overall for ships visiting the island. Thank you.
And further to that, I think it would also be useful to speak about the impact and the efficiency associated with cruise vessels coming into the port of Bridgetown as well, Najla. And also, perhaps, you may wish to enlighten the Parliament and the public with respect to the proposed marine insurance bill.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Najla.
Minister, if you don't mind, you could kindly clarify the last part you said about marine insurance.
No, I'm just speaking to the fact that we have to bring a suite of legislation, including a proposed marine insurance bill, and what are some of the benefits associated with that. And if you could also explain to the country the critical importance of the cruise ship business and the facilitation bill.
In respect of the marine insurance, the importance of that is very closely tied to limitation of liability for maritime claims. The IMO has a regime, well, a set of instruments that are dedicated to ensuring that even though ship owners are exposed to certain risks, obviously there's the risk of accident, the risk of maritime casualties. The fact of those risks can actually deter some persons from wanting to enter the shipping industry. So what the IMO has done is set a limitation, or basically a cap, on the liability for ship owners or other vessel interests, while at the same time ensuring adequate compensation to victims for a maritime accident. And what has to happen is that your marine insurance coverage must equate to the limit of liability. The insurance is also important to protect other persons on board, like your seafarers, for example, and to ensure the safety of the crew, and that they're comforted that when deciding to sign up to work on board these ships, that there are certain protections for them in place, as this is part of their decent work and living conditions on board, as the ship is both where they live and work. Thank you.
Thank you. The Permanent Secretary would like to weigh in as well. P.S. Blackman.
Thank you, Minister. I wanted to add to what Najla and her supervisor spoke about, because this morning, earlier, we had a question about what initiatives we are undertaking to increase spend on the island. And the work that is being done with respect to the shipping and that framework actually allows the port to be able to clear ships faster, particularly the cruise ships. And behind it increases efficiency because now there's an opportunity for people, those passengers, to disembark earlier and therefore have a longer period of time on the island. And through that, we anticipate then with these types of initiatives taking place in the ministry, and then working in tandem with BTMI, we are increasingly improving the opportunity for us then to be able to have the various initiatives working with other ministries and so on to be able to increase spend on the island because of this improvement in the efficiency in how we handle ships and so on as they arrive in the Bridgetown port. So as we improve the efficiencies on that back end, on the front end part, it allows the passengers to spend a longer time on island, and therefore we then can tantalize them with more attractions and other sites to be able to extract additional revenue from our guests. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierce. Minister?
Sorry, may I have a follow-up question on the last one, Mr. Chairman, please? Thank you. So in relation to, and I'm happy that Ms. Blackman raised the issue of the local shippers, the local boaters, and what is being done for them. But there are a number of Barbadians who currently play a trade. I represent St. Michael South, Bayville, formerly the Bayland, no, Bayville. But in that area, it was well known for a number of seamen. It produced seamen. Bayland probably had the most seamen per capita, certainly in Barbados and probably in the world. And so my question is, through you, Minister, or if you choose to answer, is that I am aware that we were working also on Seafarers legislation. And I would like to know what are the benefits for local persons who then find themselves working on these ships, and what rights, maybe what responsibilities, but what are the benefits associated with such a bill, and when will we be able to say that the Seafarers legislation is indeed in place if it does in fact protect the local Barbadians who find themselves making a living on board these vessels?
Thank you very much, Minister. And it's a good point. And I believe Najla was spoken in part to decent work. But I will ask Najla to come back and also answer the question as us. Ms. King.
Thank you, Minister. The Seafarers suite of laws will be very, very beneficial to Barbados and seafarers because the nature of shipping is that it is international. And Barbados, we have an open registry system as with most developed shipping nations. And what this means is that even though, for example, a vessel may be built in Germany, it may be trading in North America, and with crew from various nationalities, the flag that the vessel sails under subjects it to its maritime laws. So our vessels will be required then to comply with the IMO's International Convention on Standards of Training, Certification, and Watchkeeping for Seafarers, STCW Convention in short. And what that does is set the minimum requirements for training and certification of persons engaged on seagoing service, whether it be on a cruise or a cargo ship or other special purpose vessel. And the importance of that is that it harmonizes the knowledge, the skills, and the competency set required to man vessels efficiently, because the IMO does not want that Barbadian seafarers, for example, learn a particular syllabus, then for Bahamas it is different because that is a safety disaster. It is safe for everyone to learn a uniform and harmonized syllabus, which is set by the IMO, which is appended to the convention, and the seafarers law, when it comes into force, will give effect to that. On the other side, the ILO, the International Labour organization, which also works jointly with the IMO, has the Maritime Labor Convention. So whereas STCW is focused on competency, the Maritime Labor Convention is focused on the human element, the well-being of the seafarer, ensuring that they have fair contractual terms from the time of recruitment throughout their entire service, to retirement, also their health, mental and physical well-being, and generally how they are treated on board. To leave your shores and go and work on a ship sometimes is very depressing for some when you research and see some of the stories that seafarers may share, if the shipboard conditions are not comfortable or are not friendly. And there's great efforts going on in the international community to improve and continuously ensure that seafarers have a home away from home, despite the ship is their workplace. So the benefits of the Seafarers Law is that it treats to the seafarer in totality. Our Barbadian seafarers, even if they're serving on foreign flag vessels and vice versa, non-national seafarers serving on Barbados registered vessels will be protected within this holistic and comprehensive framework. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't believe we could have asked for more expert advice on the matter than coming from the Director of Maritime Affairs. But there's also, Minister, in terms of the seafarers legislation, a component which we should perhaps share with you. And as I asked the Chief Technical Officer, Mrs. Jacqueline Blackman, to take the mic, it has to do about career opportunities within the maritime sector. The Chief Technical Officer will be able to tell you about the activities being undertaken in conjunction with BIMAP and the Salmon Chapman Institute. And the issues here for us is about building additional capacity in Barbados within the maritime space or maritime sector to allow young and other Barbadians who wish to pursue careers to do so in Barbados with the requisite qualification. I'll ask the Chief Technical Officer, Ms. Blackman, to weigh in on this matter as well. Ms. Blackman.
Thank you, Minister. As you rightly said, we do have a lack of capacity. And what we have been doing within the ministry is embarking on consultations with various training institutions, as you mentioned, BIMAP and Samuel Chapman Prescott Institute of Technology, to devise training programs to equip persons to work in the maritime field, whether it is onshore or at sea. In 2023, last year, we actually did work with BIMAP to have a certificate program in management studies with an emphasis on maritime, and we trained 16 persons in that area. Included in that is marketing in maritime marketing and crew management on board vessels. Hopefully, we can launch another program this year and expand the numbers. While we are working with BIMAP and they are producing the programs, we are also working with other training institutions to see if we can develop other programs, some programs dealing with basic training in safety, basic training for persons who will be going on board vessels, which is necessary under the STCW convention that Ms. King would have mentioned before. So in addition to the legislative framework, we're also looking at it in a practical manner and trying to increase our capacity in the maritime field, and equip them to work, whether it's in Barbados or overseas, for careers onshore or at sea. Thank you.
Thank you. And when the Chief Technical Officer, Ms. Blackman, was making the point that she's hoping to, I presume she's predicating that on the fact that obviously when the estimates of revenue and expenditure, when the estimates are approved, that there is additional funding in the program, in the estimates to continue the good work that she and the other officers within the ministry continue to partner with the training institutions. So in this year's estimates, for the record, provision has been made for additional training as we build out this very critical sector for future employment for Barbadians. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I just want to close by saying that it is clear to me that you have a commanding understanding of the ministry, all areas of the ministry, and that unlike the former administration, you surely have not left the issues in shipping behind. I commend your team, who are also excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member of St. John.
Thank you, Chair. I want to echo the sentiments of my colleague who just spoke before me in relation to what is happening within the Ministry of Tourism. My questions, Minister, what additional marketing strategies are being put in place in relation to the increase in the airlift? And attached to that, can Gaia handle the airlift that you're proposing?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Indeed, two good questions. I will ask the Chief Executive Officer of Grand Ems International Airport to address these matters. But with the number of flights that we have coming into Barbados, landing at Grand Ems International Airport, particularly between the period of 12:30 p.m. and about 6:30 p.m., there's a significant amount of traffic coming into the destination. And therefore, we have to, within the resources that we have, manage it. But I'll ask the CEO of the Grand Ems International Airport to speak, and I will thereafter ask the Department of Air Navigation Services as well to address some of these issues. But I'll ask first the CEO. Mr. Bourne?
Good afternoon. Thanks, Minister, and thanks for the question. As been documented on numerous occasions and mentioned in this House, we are challenged between those peak periods. But one of the things we've done in recent times, and it's probably been highlighted a bit in the press, we're working on increasing our throughput capacity. Our current infrastructure is designed to handle roughly 1,600 passengers a minute, both on the inbound and outbound. And at anytime during the peak period, we exceed that by at least 1,000 passengers an hour. So one of the innovative things that we would have been working on over the last couple of months, especially trying to meet this current winter period, was the reintroduction of the Concorde experience, not just as a tourist attraction, but as a facility being able to handle roughly a throughput of 900 to 1,000 passengers an hour. We did have some delays as it related to that, but the seating capacity that we have endured in that facility is between 600 and 700 passengers. And the main aim would be to move the traditional air-to-sea passengers into a dedicated facility and free up the capacity of the regular terminal for the commercial traffic. So those are the things that we've been working on in terms of improving our overall throughput and also enhancing that customer experience. We anticipate that that would assist us, and one of the other aspects that we're also looking at, I was just even looking at the graph for this afternoon, at any given time, we could have as many as 19 wide bodies on the ground within that 4 or 5 hour period. And any delays in any operational activity could cause the aircraft to actually have to hold for a parking position. And one of the things the minister has been challenging us is now in terms of looking to redevelop and expand our ramp area for additional aircraft. We're one of the few airports in the region that can facilitate Code F aircraft. And when they say Code F, the larger aircraft, the Airbus 380. But even with that additional capacity that we would have had in our airport runway rehabilitation and expansion in 2021, 2022, we've already outgrown that expansion, and more of the commercial airlines, as the minister had alluded to, are even going to their bigger aircraft. They're bringing their bigger aircraft, increased capacity. Similarly, this is something that the port is also experiencing with the new mega ships. So we are constantly working and gearing our capacity to meet the demands. But as I say, with the analysis, we need the early analysis and the early data and interventions that we could plan ahead, but something that is not always forthcoming, but that is our immediacy at this point in time. I think it will serve us well for short to medium term, but we still also have to look to expand further, and I think that's part of where the government's whole privatization of the airport and capital expansion is geared towards being able to meet those future needs. Hope I've answered your question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bourne. I will also ask Mr. Guy Blanchett, who's the Chief Air Traffic Officer, to have to give some remarks on this matter as well, because on any given day, they can have about 120 flights coming in during the winter period and maybe 60, maybe max 80 in the summer. And therefore, his perspective, along with the perspective of the Director of the Air Navigation Services, Mr. Gierner, would be appropriate. So I'll ask the Chief Air Traffic Controller to speak, followed by the Director of the Air Navigation Services. Mr. Blanchett.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, Mr. Chairman, members of Parliament. My name is Glenn Blanchett. I'm the Chief Air Traffic Control Officer. As the Minister said, during the course of the winter season, our traffic levels exceeds 120 movements per day. We spoke about having the aircraft on the ground, but we need to more or less assist these aircraft through the Barbados airspace to get them on the ground. So on any given day, we have congestion, and how we handle this traffic is basically the procedures that we utilize. The way we do things must change because we realize that going forward now, there's a growth in air traffic. So how we do things must change. We must look at reorganizing the Barbados airspace, and we must look at the other procedures. So as the Air Navigation Service Department, that is the first step. We have to now look at capacity, and we have to look at capability. And these are things that we are looking at now going forward because we are aware now that the air traffic is going to grow continuously. Thank you.
I'll ask the Director of the ANS to speak to the issues and some wider issues as well. Mr. Gierner.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the House. My name is Carl Gainier. I'm the Director of Air Navigation Services, presently located at the control tower at the Grantley Adams International Airport. There are some new initiatives by the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, that sets the standards and recommended practices for aviation industry worldwide. So there is a ASBU initiative, Aviation System Block Upgrade, which start from 2013 to 2033. So we're right in the middle of this initiative that speaks to aircraft performance, new aircraft performance, and performance of the air traffic control system, to upgrade the system using new technology, the satellite technology, that is more effective and more efficient and also safer. There's an initiative called performance-based navigation where, similar to the moving on the road, moving from the airport to downtown, there's a highway, very smart thing that was done years ago in Barbados to build a highway. But depending on the time of the day, when the traffic is at the peak, you have to take the old road to get downtown. It's the same thing, building your airport capacity on the ground. You have to look at the capacity in the airspace. So performance-based navigation is using new aircraft equipage and new equipment on the ground by ATC to ensure that you build highways in the sky. Instead of just having a one-way route, you have routes just like on the highway. Aircraft going northbound on one side, aircraft on southbound on another side. So you have an even flow. There's also what you call an air traffic flow management, a new initiative where all the equipment in the airport operator, the airline operator, the airspace operators, which is air traffic control, will be connected. So the information for aircraft movement will flow in real time. So if there's a delay in any system or at any airport, the information will flow and handle the delay before it happens. So previously, aircraft and passengers will be congested at the airport or in the airspace. Now there is a free flow using air traffic flow management. So we're building out the infrastructure of the Civil Aviation Air Navigation Services Division to be abreast of first world capabilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gierner, and also, Minister, if you allow me to, and the chairman as well. On page 62 of the estimates, under sub-program 0341, and I will ask Mr. Gierner to come back on this issue. You will note that under professional services at 226, there has been a vote, proposed budget of $4.1 million versus $1.1 million that we have in the estimates. And now these are not political consultants, but these are for professional consultants who are going to come in within multiple areas within the Air Navigation Services Department to give us a number of advice, give us some advice, but also more importantly, to look and assess what we have. The challenge first, as outlined, is that oftentimes, because we have not kept pace in terms of with the modernization of equipment, there is now a need for us to do so. And even though the equipment that we have serves well, we have to look to the future as we modernize the airport operations. We are in the process of doing so. I don't want to speak at length about it, but we will have a number of consultants in who will be helping us to look at where we currently locate our tower, opportunities for additional ramp space, and how we can build out the entire aviation system at the Grant Williams International Airport. But I would ask Mr. Gierner to expand on this area. And also, with respect to the equipment, you will also see in the estimates at 752, provision, there's an increase there, just over $1 million. And again, this is an investment in the new instrument landing systems and the VOR. But Mr. Gierner, I'm not an expert in this area, Mr. Chairman. So with your leave, I will ask Mr. Gierner to expand on these matters and the critical importance for the consultants and the continuation of assessment of the airport infrastructure as it relates to the navigation services. Mr. Gierner.
Thank you, Minister. There are four basic areas, that needs to be modernized in the Air Navigation Services Department. It's the people, looking at the people first. The buildings, that's the control tower and the school, that is mentioned by the minister. The equipment that goes with these buildings. And the procedures, because if you modernize your building, your people, your equipment, and you do not have the procedures, written procedures that will explain everything that is done, then there will be issues when, in terms of audits by the International Civil Aviation Organization. So there are four areas that need to be looked at. The people aspect begins with the school, employing new staff and training for training and development of both new and current staff. There must be constant training and development in the area of ATC, AIS, that's Aeronautical Information Service, the engineering, the quality assurance, and search and rescue. Those are the main areas that we need to build at the school. So hence, a new building is needed and new consoles for training. These consoles are also have the capability to be multi-task, multi-purpose, not just for training, but can be used as a backup system, a redundancy system to what happens at the airport in all areas. So if there's an issue at the airport, you can run the airspace from the school. So that, you know, those are some of the things, the achievements that we can make there. So in terms of the, the new equipment, we have current radar, but there's a new satellite-based system called the ADSB, Aeronautical System Broadcast, that use satellite technology, because radar technology is subject to curvature of the Earth. Satellite is not affected by Earth curvature. So it's more effective and more efficient. So those are some of the ICAO initiatives that we will be implementing in the next financial year. Hence the need to have these consultancy services to assist with training new staff and developing current staff, to help to design procedures for these aircraft to operate in, and the engineering team making one team, because everything we do, there's an engineering aspect to it. Not just for Barbados, but to connect, most important, with the airspace around us, Trinidad, St. Lucia, all those other states. The engineering team will assist to not just to implement new business, but to connect, so that the information will flow in real time. That's the modern way of where aviation is going. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you can tell, honorable members, we are obviously putting the human resources together as we set out to upgrade the facilities at the airport. Potentially, the upgrade will have to speak to the existing control tower. Obviously, matters of location of a tower, whether we should have a new tower, and the like would obviously have to be brought into this discussion. But once we have assembled the skills and we get the assessment, then we'll be obviously updating the chamber in respect of where we want to go. In terms of our future goals, we want to obviously go the route of becoming an air services provider. That is where the world is going. That would allow us to do a number of things, including going back to the days when Barbados was used as a training center for the region. Currently, we don't have that capacity, but we want to rebuild that capacity. And we also want to have, in going that route, a more strategic focus where we can lay claim to our airspace in terms of the upper airspace, I might add, the upper airspace, which could obviously bring us substantial revenue to the air navigation services provider. We are finalizing a document which we intend to take to the cabinet to look at the whole issue of the air services provider and how we will work that out. The other issue, and it is one that we have to focus on, is the building out of human resources within the aviation sector. Currently in Barbados, we are advertising for additional air traffic controllers because we need them. But oftentimes, a lot of Barbadians, have not been fully trained up to meet the requirements, and therefore there's that deficit in terms of a career. And we want to get more Barbadians becoming more aware of careers in aviation and how those careers in aviation can guide them. For example, we're looking for an inspectorate to work at the Civil Aviation Authority
and we had to obviously get expatriate labor in order to help us. So the plan that we have to transition the aviation will also include training and retraining, and obviously encouraging more Barbadians to seek out aviation as a career. It's not only about being a pilot, it's about obviously being more technical. It could be air traffic controller and all the bells and whistles associated with an air navigation services department. So that's our vision. That is where we intend to take the air navigation services department to. At the same time, what we've been able to do, and certainly I can speak for my tenure as minister, that we have agreed and tap into a number of training opportunities for the professionals who work within the Air Navigation Services Department and related departments to allow them to continuously train. And we are fortunate in the sense that we have gotten a lot of assistance from a number of international institutions, including ICAO, to help us with this training. So I thought I would, Minister, add those few points to the expert advice that we would receive from the Chief Air Traffic Control Officer and the Director of the dance. Thank you. Oh, sorry, in relation, I missed one, in relation to the marketing activities, perhaps we can ask Mr. King to come back quickly to the mic and to also give you a brief overview of the marketing activities associated with the BTMI.
Chair and honorable members, if the minister doesn't mind repeating the question again so that I can.
What additional marketing strategies are being put in place to handle the increased airlift?
Speaking specifically to the support for airlift from Cayman Islands, well, via Cayman Airways, we strike there's a fine line there where obviously we're trying to encourage travel to the island and find different opportunities and different audiences for a reason to come to Barbados. But obviously we're not trying to encourage Barbadians to travel themselves outside of, so that's the line that we're trying to strike. As it relates to Cayman Airways, we found opportunities where we can encourage both the expatriate community there and then some of the opportunity for Jamaicans and Cubans and Haitians to travel through Cayman down to Barbados as well. There are opportunities for people to come here for either business, conversations with the diaspora to use Cayman as a hub to come through to Barbados as well. And the other opportunity is for cruise travel, to use Barbados as a destination point for some of the European cruises. So most of the marketing activity we target or focus on for Cayman Airways is the multiple different points or the multiple opportunities we have to speak to an audience in Cayman Islands, as well as a route from the west coast of the U.S. as well. When we think of Suriname, that offers another opportunity with a link through South America as well. And as you would appreciate, our tourism product is quite different to what Suriname has to offer. So most of our activity to the Surinamese audience and a South American audience is for that primary offering of sun, sea, and sand. But there's still other opportunities for businesses, and we have done quite a bit of messaging in Guyana as well via Suriname Airways. So I think every opportunity for additional airlift gives us another opportunity to introduce ourselves to another audience. And we are able then to, through the data that we get through the research department, we are able to identify their reasons and purpose of travel and be able to speak to them and match them with the product that they can look for in Barbados.
Thank you very much. And Minister, just one follow-up, because the other issue is that
The government, as part of the expansion program at the airport, would have obviously created a parking apron for private jets. And particularly in the winter, when you go to the GrandAms International Airport, you will see that even though we've just done it, there's still no room for private jets. And even though we have a lot of FBOs at the airport, they too are becoming very constrained. So it makes the argument that at a later date, we're gonna have to explore new opportunities to really expand the tarmac, or find ways where we can have ramp, not the tarmac, ramp space to facilitate the additional both commercial and private jets into the island. And of course, as we well know, we also have some cargo jets. We're also going to have to look at the current location of the tower, and the time has come where we are going to have to look to reposition the tower. It's there, it has served us well, but there also, as the director of the dance had indicated, we now have to build out, and therefore work has commenced in earnest with respect to the potential for a new control tower, as well as a tower cab associated with the office administrative building, which would allow us not only to facilitate training for locals and others within the Caribbean, but to really commence the build out of the aviation sector. I thought I would just add those few remarks to the question posed. Thank you.
Chair, my final question, and I'm asking this for you too, Chair. We who have rural constituencies, and the Honourable Member for St. Peter is often bragging to me about the many mill walls that are in St. Peter. And I'm curious to know about community tourism. Now, I know there may be a nexus between the heritage tourism and community-based tourism, but I think there's a possibility for us to create some employment for persons at the community level, particularly, like I said again, in the rural constituencies. So I just want to know, Minister, what is available in terms of assistance, advice as it relates to developing community-based tourism. For example, I know in St. Lucia, there's a community that provides tours to, let me say, watch turtles or view turtles on the beach. And this is coming strictly from out of the community. So I'm just wondering what the Honourable Member for St. Peter can probably do to have some of those mill walls come alive and create employment for persons on there, similar to St. John and the other rural communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. And I think the wonderful parish and people that you represent in St. John, they know well about community tourism as well, sir. Because oftentimes, if I'm driving through St. John, I see them at a particular parish church. And that fantastic view of the Atlantic Ocean and the associated niceties associated with that parish. What I will do, and I do support it, what I will do, I will ask Ms. Marcia Aline to also give you some feedback in respect of community tourism and their avenues within the ministry that we can help to build out community tourism in Barbados. Indeed, our colleague from St. Andrew, the Honourable Member St. Andrew knows this well, but I will ask Ms. Marcia Aline to address the specific issue that you've raised. Ms. Aline.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Minister, the whole notion of community tourism has really captured our attention for a number of years. And we have been working with a number of agencies to build out community tourism in a way that is sustainable. And I specifically use that point, sustainable, because one of the things that we don't want to do is to go into a community and show them what to do, and then there's no one to carry on the particular exercise or whatever it is. So we have been working through agencies. We actually did some training with the communities very recently, and we are in the process of doing some additional training with the communities. And so we're working through the PICs, which is the Parish Independence Committees, because we feel that they are in the communities themselves and they have the pulse of what's going on within the various communities. And they can also tell us what projects and what opportunities exist within the communities. So we've been working through them, and we have in our budget put aside some funds to specifically work with those communities. In addition to the PICs, there are some communities that we have been doing some significant work with. In addition to the community that the minister mentioned in St. Andrew, we're also working with the communities in the Crab Hill, in St. Peter, to build out experiential tourism, very similar to what's happening in Oistins right now, where we're taking some of the capacity that's at Oistins into Crab Hill, and that has been working successfully. And we intend to actually take that same model throughout the communities on the West Coast and the East Coast of the island, of course, into St. John as well. But I think that the strategies of working through the PICs is one that has actually given us some, I think, returns on our investment, and we will continue to support the communities through that as well.
Sure, just a follow-up question, because I'm aware of the work, obviously, with the PICs, but I have a product in St. John that I think is dormant, Codrington College. 2 years ago, there was a concert there, Jesus Christ Superstar. The setting and the background is absolutely fantastic. So are you saying that you can make a proposal and to see if something like a jazz concert at Codrington College, because again, like I mentioned before, this now will be that nexus between heritage and community base. These are things that are possible.
Through you, Minister, I may respond. We actually do have a proposal right now from Codrington College on a community-based tourism initiative that we are in the process of examining to see how we can actually support that program. But you referenced Jesus Christ Superstar, and I actually was at that conference a couple of years ago, and I do agree with you. It really did, the backdrop of the entire area, I think, did actually add to the experience. And it's along those lines that the project is actually has the attention of our ministry, of our department, and so we will revert back to the team as soon as we've completed the examinations of it.
And just one other point, Minister, respect of community tourism, and there is obviously significant benefits and gains, even in Barbados with the Airbnb verbal type arrangements, accommodation arrangements. Those are oftentimes located, the accommodation that is, are oftentimes located within communities, and they contribute in no small measure to the persons who own accommodation rentals within a community. Of course, we're moving to ensure through the proposed tourist accommodation bill, when we bring it here to this chamber, that we even regulate it, because we have to be mindful of our image, and we also have to be mindful of any potential risks and to mitigate those risks. But I would also say that when you look at Airbnb and Vrbo, they alone within community tourism would have earned about $484 million US. So we probably would not earn that much here in Barbados. But the broader point I'm making is that if you look and see what community tourism contributes to both of those entities, you could well imagine, once we concentrate it and do what we have to do it and do it properly, what that could also earn us in Barbados, along with the other wonderful attractions, sir, that you have in the wonderful parish of St. John. Just thought I'll add those few remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. John. Thank you, Minister. Honourable Member for St. Michael, South Central.
Thank you, Chair. I believe colleagues who spoke before me have acknowledged the very strong work of the ministry in being able to reclaim some of the lost ground, especially with respect to COVID. Really, the very strong rebound and growth that we have seen has been driven by this sector that some would want us to abandon. And I think that, as others have said before, it's important to acknowledge the contribution of the sector. And while we do work on developing new kinds of industries, that we also make sure that we invest in the industries that are the natural competitive advantage for our country. Now, Minister, we spoke earlier with respect to Grantley Adams International Airport. There was a lot that was said with which one could agree about the quality of customer experience. And at that time, it was acknowledged that, for example, the Immigration Department has really done tremendous work in being able to modernize and improve that experience. I would also say that there's an extent to which customs and the officers who work with customs have also been able to improve some of what we had been experiencing with respect to arrival, passage through the airport, and so on. However, one of the key service quality issues in any service is consistency, as you know, Minister. And one of my concerns is that when it comes to the experience, specifically with customs, that while we do have an improvement and we have very hardworking, dedicated officers, my concern is the consistency. I'm aware, and none could be more aware than you, Minister, that the airport and the approach to managing an airport in circumstances where you are not directly responsible for every entity that is operating within that airport, that is a particular challenge. And I think that your airport management also have to be commended for keeping all of those balls in the air and maintaining those relationships with the various teams that contribute to that service experience. But, Minister, I have to say it to you that growing up, I don't come from a place where we were in a position to travel often. As a matter of fact, I traveled once in my young life, and it was a class trip from Belmont Primary School to go to Venezuela. And my mother never baked so much sweetbread and killed so many chickens to get us to be able to go on that trip. So that was my real big experience passing through the airport. But we used to go to the airport. Bajans, remember when you used to go to the airport as an expedition. Watch the planes take off, watch the planes land, watch people coming out and hear from them what that experience was like for them. And at that time, even as a young child, I was disturbed by the fact that the experience coming through customs of Black Barbadians coming back home was completely different from the experience of visitors coming to our country. Minister, this is the year 2024. There are all kinds of national security concerns with which we must concern ourselves. That is given. But some years later, as a grown woman coming back through the airport in December of 2023, I would not expect to experience the same kind of bifurcation that I saw happening as a child. Minister, the Ministry of Finance, the government of Barbados, have set up certain things to ensure that when it comes to expenditure on items originating outside of Barbados, I dare say that they're perhaps getting their due. There's a foreign exchange tax that we all now see when we make a purchase. There are other ways that my colleague neighbor sitting beside me and the Ministry of Finance have found to be able to work with online platforms to make sure that they're able to capture, rightly so, taxes at different forms of making certain purchases. I know that the small revenue that customs is getting from causing Barbadians arriving home, or Barbadians arriving home from holiday, or Barbadians coming back from business trips, or other people that are not Barbadians, but they may determine, look, Barbadian enough to send through a red line. When they send other people directly through a green line with not a question asked. And worse, the Barbadians that are coming through the red line, I understand the national security issues, those kinds of checks should continue, but there's a way for them to continue. I know that the revenue that they're getting from a grandmother that bring back some sneakers for her little granddaughter, the revenue that you are getting from that exercise of wading through a person's personal effects in full sight of the arrivals hall is not enough to warrant the indignity of that exercise. Minister, I know you are looking back because you are asking, well, why are you posing this question to me? And you may be looking at my neighbor. And he and I have had this conversation. But the real question is, to what extent have you or will you, and again, I don't want to give the impression that this is the consistent approach. It is the approach that we see in pockets when coming through the airport in 2024. So, Minister, to what extent have you or will you settle with our colleagues and friends at Customs a set of policies, a set of standards that relate to the customer service experience of all people coming through our Grantley Adams International Airport?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Perhaps you were with me, I believe it was less than a week ago, when I was coming through the Grantley Adams International Airport, and as you know, I have to travel on government business. And perhaps you were with the Permanent Secretary and the Director of PR when they were coming through last week. When I believe the Permanent Secretary had to remind them, coming through with just a carry-on that she traveled with, that she too was a public officer and that she only had a carry-on. I identify with what you're saying. I took the opportunity to observe certain practices, and therefore I indicated to my Permanent Secretary that we would have a conversation with the Comptroller of Customs, and obviously, as you know, Minister, it is not, I don't have ministerial oversight over that department, but we are all in this together, and we have to collaborate. I know that my Permanent Secretary had relayed to the Comptroller of Customs her own personal experience when she came through. I will say that the Comptroller is very responsive when our feedback is given, and I commend him for that because it is necessary.
We have to be careful as we build out a destination that we do not create unnecessary problems for the traveling public. We are oftentimes faced with situations where we get complaints from individuals who say, well, they're just coming here on vacation. You know, all the security clearances would have been observed either at the port of origin or when your bags come through, obviously with all the security features that we have to do in the back end, because we have to do that to protect the destination. So what I will commit is that, and subject to the approval of the line minister, is that we can perhaps form a task force with the chief, the Comptroller of Customs, to see how best we can look at this issue. They have their job to do and we have to respect them. But at the same time, I understand some of the concerns that you've raised, and you also position your comments within the context of national security. I use the example when we travel and we are going through Miami. You know, you go through, you see thousands of passengers going through, they do their security checks, which is all right. The same thing applies when you go to United Kingdom. But what is sometimes very upsetting to passengers when they land here, including locals who complain, is oftentimes how they perceive the customer service. So we have to focus more on training. We have to focus more, as you indicated, on the consistent delivery of service. And, you know, you can ask people questions. It depends how you frame them, and then in order to get the response. So I agree that it is a total process improvement. As you said, the Immigration Department, their systems work well, and they're to be commended for all the work done by the former Chief Immigration Officer there as well. And we also have, and we're improving the baggage. So yes, we have to improve additional systems to ensure we have that consistent delivery of service as it relates. But you may sense in my tone that I'm treading very cautiously, because I do not disrespect political lines and authority. But at the same time, if we have challenges, we have to sit down and discuss them with a view, because predominantly we are processing, and with the new business we're getting in, we have to be very mindful of the potential backlash if we do not get all the customer services going in the right direction at the Grant Williams International Airport. And Minister, I hope I have given you the appropriate response.
You have indeed, Minister. Let me say that as a traveler myself, I tend not to feel too inconvenienced by delays that are going to keep me safe. That's one thing. Much of the operations that we see in the situation I just described involves things like people actually checking the commercial value of things that people are bringing back, charging duties, writing them in a receipt book, sending somebody to pay. There's a line stretching as far back as the eye can see while all of this is happening, while one person is walking from one place to the other with this receipt book and trying to get it. That is not a national security concern. That is an efficiency operation that can be improved on the one hand, but on the other, there are issues that I mentioned earlier that suggest that the targeting for that process is problematic in a country with the history of Barbados. And that too must be addressed by all of us, not just by you, Minister. So I thank you for the thoughtful response. Sticking with the issue of the airport and the planned redevelopment, my second question is very straightforward. There are many people who see this redevelopment as holding great potential for small business. There are some small opportunities already. I hope I will be allowed to mention Carrington Rum Cream that is already established at the airport and doing good business and comes from a little place y'all might know called Carrington Village. And so we see that the airport and that the sector is trying to encourage small business. But the questions that I am getting from many of my constituents is what will be the future opportunities for commerce by small business people through not just the airport, but also arriving vessels. So through the seaport as well. The other day I was at a meeting at BIDC, Export Barbados, stone's throw away from the port, looking across and realizing that while BIDC works so much on developing local products, you almost wish that you could take some of them up and throw them across to land on the cruise ship, because that might be the only way that we get them there. What do you consider, Minister, to be the strategy, or what is the strategy that you have, not just for this kind of approach where a person has product physically located at the airport for a temporary display, but what are the opportunities through the airport redevelopment and as well in terms of cruise that will give small businesses an opportunity in this country?
Thank you very much, Minister, Honourable Member. I will also ask the CEO of the Grand Isles International Airport to weigh in here. But suffice to say, I must tell you that the management at the airport, they've done an outstanding job in bringing a lot of small business owners into even the departure area where you check in. I have seen from persons who have flavored popcorn businesses to other businesses there, and I really have to commend the management for their foresight in allowing small business people to have an opportunity and to build their businesses there, and I really want to congratulate them for that. And I know Mr. Bourne will go into greater detail. In respect of the seaport as well, there is a cruise terminal. As you're aware, the port took responsibility for the cruise terminal. The port spent close to $1 million on that facility. There are opportunities in there, and well, there are small business persons in there in addition to other shops who are there during the cruise season. And as we return to a very busy summer season this year, there are opportunities will lie therein for those operators. In respect of the airport redevelopment, a number of the concessionaires that we have at the airport will continue. They have contracts, and those contracts will have to be honored. And of course, with the new arrangement that we are seeking to conclude, there will also be further opportunities, because as the airport builds and expands, it is important that we have facilities, and particularly retail facilities. And it's also important to know that with these PPP arrangements, you see them in Jamaica, you see them elsewhere, they always maintain opportunity, and they always create opportunities, I might add, for businesses, because if their revenues are to grow, they rely on an airport as a shopping mall. They rely on varied experiences, both local and those that are designed to sell the traditional items that you would normally find in an airport facility. But the redevelopment will not obstruct the allowance for small and medium-sized enterprises to do business at the airport in particular, and certainly at the seaport. We're looking to see how best we can expand such opportunities. I would refer to what we're doing on behalf of the
port taxi operators in terms of the strategy there in order to drive additional spend and get more business to them. We are consistently looking to see how best we can drive additional revenues, which would in turn allow us to have greater spend on island. I'll pause and I'll ask the CEO of the Grand Evans International Airport, Mr. Bourne, to respond to your question as well. Mr. Bourne?
Thanks, Minister. And just on expanding on what the Minister would have alluded to, the Small Business Initiative was one that was envisioned by former Minister Simmons when he was in charge of that ministry and when he saw that insight into the airport. But management saw it fit to expand on that initiative. The initiative was basically geared towards the air-to-sea season, which was seasonal, and we sought to expand it across the entire diaspora of the airport and have it one for annual exercise. Minister, you have spoken to the Carrington's initiative. That's one that is going quite well, and there are quite a number of others. And from the longevity of the project, and it's something that we've been having from the Barbados negotiation team when we're meeting with the persons associated with the PPP, is to have these types of initiatives not only expanded, but grow. And one of the main things that we will envision or we would realize within the PPP partnership is not just the advent of jet bridges and those types of things that everyone is speaking to, but there's a plan for a complete build-out and re-commercialization of the Grand Islands International Airport, offering a lot of the experiences that we would see when we travel and what we would want as a people. So I will say in this Honourable House that significant commercial enterprise will go on in that new development. Is one of the main capital expansion aspects of it, beyond the operational side, is to actually build out a full functioning commercial space. So that activity will continue. Thanks.
And thank you very much, Mr. Bourne. And also, added to that, Honourable Member, I also believe that there are also opportunities for a new hospitality facility to be built out in Barbados. Oftentimes, what we are faced with, especially when you have to check out of a hotel, let's say 11 or 12, and your flight is, let's say, 5 or 10 p.m. It's a wonderful opportunity for entrepreneurs, small and medium-sized, to think about how best they can create a hospitality or create hospitality facilities catering to the traveler. And I'll develop this further when I speak to it on another occasion. But I also think that that's a wonderful opportunity for small and medium-sized businesses to benefit within the radius of either the airport or the seaport as they advance as well community-based tourism activities. Just thought about that, Minister. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks very much. My final question has to do with a program an innovative program that was started here some years ago in an effort to buttress the fall in arrivals that we would naturally expect and did see all over the world in the sector as a result of COVID. That's the Welcome Stamp program. The Welcome Stamp program that others across the world saw and copied because they saw what an innovative measure it was, not really to do the traditional sun-sea sand model for islands like ours, or the traditional visitor model, the traditional tourist model that we know of, but really to build out the visitor economy in a more lasting way by attracting digital and other kinds of nomads, people who, by nature of their profession or their industry, can work anywhere, and inviting them here to live and work and experience the country. But the point of that, when it was developed, was not just to have higher numbers on the island for a longer time. It was also to attract talent in particular sectors, to create a certain level of contagion. And I hesitate to use that with respect to something that came up during COVID, but a certain level of contagion in terms of entrepreneurial spirit and activity. In other words, we wanted young in particular, but really of any age, but young in age or in approach entrepreneurs who are in interesting sectors that could build out from Barbados, that would then move on to create hubs in Barbados, as some of them have done, and be able to generate real job-led growth in the country. I wonder, Minister, whether you and your ministry, your team, have been able to, along perhaps with Invest Barbados and others, have been able to do any kind of tracking or data analysis of, apart from the dollars and cents of the exercise, of the visits themselves, to do any kind of analysis in terms of what was the more far-reaching economic impact of having those individuals come and live and work here in Barbados in the sectors that they did. I know of many who work in the technology sector, and who in fact, as a result of being here, have set up to work from Barbados. Have you done the analysis to understand what has been that impact, whether there are other, whether that needs to be supported in any way by other organs of government, whether we need to be working with Invest Barbados to help particular sectors build out based on the Welcome Stamp program? Can you tell us anything about what has been the real far-reaching economic impact of that program?
Thank you, Honourable Member. I'll ask the CEO of the BTMI to speak to some of those issues. I know that we have a dedicated officer within the ministry, within the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc., who works very closely in conjunction with Invest Barbados. What I can tell you that since the program was launched, and it was launched long before I became minister, I believe it was in 2020, we've had a total of 8,359 applicants, including spouses and dependents. And these applicants varied from, when you look at the type of applicants, would have ranged from 65% being the individual to 35% being in the family units. And we also looked at spouses as well as dependents. And we've also been able to capture a lot of data. For example, the applicants by age, the months in which they came to Barbados. We also have, for example, the nationalities of those who came here on the welcome stamp. For example, the United States led the way with 1,245 in terms of applications. United Kingdom as well, 1,331. Just to give you a feel for the applicants by nationality. In terms of the top applicants, as I indicated, out of the United States, and of course, what we were able to do is to create a lot of data from the applications that we would have received. Of course, the applications went through a process to convert them once they were successful, and obviously that information we also have. In respect of the number of the duration of stay, we've also captured that information. What you're specifically asking, I thought I would just give you a little bit about the background. I'm sure you well know this as well. For us, we have seen, I know that the Chief Executive Officer of the BTMI acting is currently working with one such person who came here on the welcome stand, who is very well known in the technology world, who worked for one of the top, if not the top,
call this company, technology companies in the world. And as a result of that relationship, that person has been able to give us a lot of advice and guidance, and I know that it's still a work in progress with respect to that particular. What we have to do is that we have to find a way now of connecting and driving more of that through Invest Barbados. I don't want to speak for Invest Barbados, but simply to say that the skills that came to Barbados and continue to come to Barbados because the program has been extended is an opportunity for us, as you've indicated, for us to look to see how best we can utilize some of these skills that come with the Welcome Start to help us improve Barbados. And oftentimes there are persons who are also willing to donate some of their time, some of their services to help build out what we have here because they really like the country and they enjoy the country. Another area for us, which is very, very important, is the word-of-mouth advertising, often engineered by persons who come to Barbados on the Welcome Stand. I've had an opportunity to meet some of these persons when they attend cocktail functions or other related functions or when they call the office. And they will tell you immediately how much they love Barbados, but more importantly, how many persons they have encouraged to come to Barbados. And that's what I meant by word-of-mouth advertising. It helps the destination, and it's something I believe that we can grow. I'll pause and I'll ask the Chief Executive Officer of the BTMI to give further clarity to the question that you've asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Continuing from the comments of the Minister, what we have found is once the Welcome Stamp program was birthed during the pandemic, it still remains relevant to some sectors and to some source markets. To that end, in 2023, we still saw over 400 persons being approved and actually arriving on island as a part of the program. So I just wanted to make sure that we are aware that the program still remains relevant despite the changing times. To that end, what we have done was to refine our tactical approach in attracting people to sign up for the Welcome Stamp and to be aware of what the benefits are to them coming to Barbados to live and work from here. We have assigned a dedicated officer. We now have a Welcome Stamp manager who sits in the BTMI, and working with the marketing team, we have been able to identify those specific sectors. I know the honorable member spoke about technology, but there are other sectors such as accounting, financial services, and also some within the arts that have made their way to Barbados to work remotely. And we have been ensuring that where there are conferences and where there are a meeting of the minds, that we are there to have a presence to make sure that the Welcome Stamp is promoted directly to those persons, let them know of the opportunities that exist here. On island, we've also made sure that we stayed connected with the on-island community because the Welcome Stampers who are here have formed their own community and they interact with each other, sharing experiences and new places and new developments on island amongst themselves. And we have been able to become and make sure that we stay a part of that community so we can stay in touch with what's happening and make sure that we always feel the pulse of the persons here. We've also created a CRM where we have collected the information of all of those persons to make sure that we know what skills we have. So pretty much a skills bank And as the minister alluded to earlier, we have been working with one of the top technical people coming out of that group, and there are some others who have shown a special interest in helping and assisting wherever they can. And in the coming months, we will definitely be exploiting those offerings that they've given to us, and we will make sure that this becomes a benefit to all in society. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Through you, I just want to thank the Minister and the team for the thoughtful and very prepared responses that we've received here today. Thanks.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I beg to move that you do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and beg leave to sit again.
The question is that I do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and beg for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Has reported progress and request leave to sit again. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the House be suspended until March 4th at 10 a.m.
The question is that this Honourable Chairman be suspended until Monday, the 4th day of March, 2024 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. You think you guys have it? This Honourable Chairman stands suspended until Monday, the 4th day of March, 2024 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.